Assalamu alaikum. Peace and blessings be upon you. In the name of God, the most gracious and the most merciful. All glory and praise belongs to God, and salutating with salutations to the beloved and all the beloveds of God, who include Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and his holy family. Thank you so much for tuning into our 10th Divine Clinic Foundation podcast series called Healing is Believing. And our subject today is a reality of magic, amulets and potions. I'm your host, QW, and joining me is my co-host, the delightful Imam Sab. Assalamu alaikum, Imam Sab. How are you today?
Shukr Alhamdulillah, praise be to God the Almighty, and upon our beloved spiritual teacher. Everything is, Alhamdulillah, as it should be. Very blessed, very blessed. Thank you for having us on the show again.
Thank you. Welcome to the show. And we truly are grateful in a time where there is so much negativity. And when we talk about, I'll just dive right into the subject matter here today. We talk about the use of magic and amulets and how there is such a conception of, from my understanding, of these amulets that are being there in terms of helping and healing and getting someone to be uplifted. And it's so important to understand what are inside these amulets, what is really being written, what is the formula that is being put there, and then that is getting attached to the body. And what is that causing to the body? What is it causing to the spirit? As we all know, everything around us is energy. There is light and positive energy, and then there's dark and negative energy. And we are beings that have energy within us, around us, our environments. And there is such a emphasis on energy here in what we do, because we believe healing is believing. And what there are schools of thought or individuals out there helping people with amulets and trying to infiltrate within those individuals, and to show that by wearing this they will be healed. But little do they also know is it's also an industry to try and get them back to come towards healing. And they never really heal, but instead they end up suffering and hurting. And Imam Musa, perhaps you can just carry on forward the discussion. And since the number of cases on the healing aspect of negativity, on the amulets and the reality of magic to come your way, and if you can share with our audience and express what really is the essence here on the healing perspective.
Yes, of course. I mean, the thing is, what we have to understand here is, by and large, there is a reality to magic. As it's stated in the Holy Scriptures, within the Torah, the Gospels, and also the Holy Quran, also in that there's mention of magic and its perception and how it affects people as well. Magic, by its very essence, is something which takes a form of something, converts it to something else, through an element of distorting the natural balance that has been set down by the Almighty presence of God Himself. Everything in nature is set and bound by its very precise laws. As we understand the universe that we're in, the world, the planets, the way that they circumvent around the sun, the planets, you know, it's by a very, very calculated trajectory that this is happening. And, so when we're looking at that kind of scale, even to the scale of even sort of microscopic organisms in how they live in the conditions of acidity and alkalinity in which they thrive in, that these conditions have to be very, very specific, in accordance to God's divine decree and His law and His order. So when you find that, when people today are harnessing the power of magic from that reality, is what they're doing in essence is trying to change a perceivable outcome in accordance to their own wants and own needs and own desires. Now, this is a very dangerous thing because many people can become victims of this energy that, when you do this energy against somebody, when you do this type of attack on somebody, that you can attack their home, their family, their children. It can leave lasting effects. Just like now today, when we're talking about smoking, there's a reality to passive smoking as well. That people, well, it was found out through studies that people were suffering through secondhand smoke, cigarette smokers. So it's affecting the children, it's affecting the homes in the same way as well. That when a person is going to someone in order to do something to change an outcome that is not through and by the will of God, and it's not done in a clean way, in a pure way, which is the way that we understand is through prayer, through belief, through communication, um, you know, um, and doing things without the proper understanding of doing things, harnessing the power of the unseen from the dark forces and the dark realities. Because again, these realities are there, and we are informed about this, um, in our scriptures from whichever belief a believer may belong to. So when we're talking about amulets and things like this, they vary, from size to their very definition, their makeup, their signature, what they do. But however, what they all do by and large is affect the human spirit. This is what they do. Um, I can see in the context in some communities where they're using them to try and prop up somebody who's in very, very negative, sort of a negative influence has befallen upon that person. And they're plagued with such negativity that by wearing certain amulets would help reposition their spiritual balance. That's essentially what's happening through the good intentions of those who are trying to harness the power of amulets on that scale. And I can understand that. But however, it's not something that we can agree with because, ourselves, our very bodies, everything for us has already been given, you see, in terms of to understand how we can bring ourselves back to a state of balance by seeking, the right education, the right understanding, and not having to resort to utilizing or harnessing certain things that maybe in the long term are definitely not good for our own spiritual health and the spiritual health of those around us.
So with these, when we talk about the
Mm,
spiritual health that is being affected by
mm-hmm,
individuals here, that the aspect of the negativity in
mm-hmm,
terms of, if you can just kind of further on and say what makes Divine Clinic Foundation, different than
mm-hmm,
anybody else who is feeling negatively affected, and in their spirit makes them, why should someone come to us? There are
mm,
so many healers out there. There are so many therapists out there.
mm-hmm.
And what do we offer that um, that so that no one can find anywhere?
Okay. Well, it's not really a case of trying to project and upsell, uh, ourselves, but what we're trying to do is trying to get people to a state of understanding. Because once you have a state of understanding, a more, you can be more clear about the decisions that you take in life. For example, I'll give you a case study in the sense of there was a family that we were dealing with recently. Now, the in-laws of this family, by their very conditioning, and this you'll find a very, very popular approach by those who follow the traditions of the sub-Indian culture, such as, those in Pakistan, Bangladesh, India, and, regions around the sub-Indian continent. is that the ta'weez, the amulets today, in how they're recognized and how they're perceived, is almost like a prescription drug. Yeah. Now, you're talking about very early on, you said about formulations. Now, it's not it's not really that important for the general person to understand about formulations and things. However, it's important to understand that these formulations are there to try for a specific purpose, yeah, for whatever that person is paying for to get that done. You know, harnessing the power of the unseen from the perspective of the lower levels of consciousness. Because again, you know, everything that is natural uh, does not need to you don't need to use anything like this at all. When you have God, you know, when they say that you are one with God and he is one with you, you know, then in effect, even that very belief and understanding that once you have God, you don't really need anything else. You don't need amulets. You don't need um, things of that
Absolutely.
nature, right? So
Absolutely.
so really, I mean, the greater understanding here is that we have a range of people who, by their very belief system, is skewed or not fully complete because, you know, again, they're having to rely on other people to try and push things for them in a way to distort their own realities. That's what's happening. So, oh, I want to
Very
get my,
true. It's like
yeah,
their faith, their spirit is at a low level, that they have no
at low
confidence in
level,
God
right? Exactly.
with the
But
with the consciousness, the
yes, of
the
course.
qadar of Allah. What's meant
Mm,
for you is meant for you, not to force things. Go
not
with
to force things.
the flow.
Exactly. Yeah.
And and we know where there is negative and dark energy
Mm,
is causing harm to
mm,
individuals when people are deciding to go in that direction.
mm,
And truly, so beautiful is that there is light as much as there is dark, and this really
mm,
is a polar opposite. But
mm,
light is so powerful that it can illuminate and break negativity.
mm,
And 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 if a spirit is not nourished, um, uh, with the faith and belief in God, and when that negative energy touches it, it just kind of keeps individuals conscious at a lower level.
yeah.
So it is that breaking of the negativity that
Mm,
then, when one has been affected
mm,
with negativity, um, the light, the pure light that comes in to heal,
mm,
breaks it and then awakens the individual's conscious and uplifts it. And
mm,
there is an awakening, and of a high level of illumination starts happening, and
mm,
a connection back to the soul.
mm,
And that is where the sense of purity and purification comes in. And we can see how the world today is has so much elements of negativity and darkness,
mm.
and with the amulets being placed, there really has to look into, because they're not necessarily healing, they're actually causing more
Hindrance,
aggravation. Yes,
definitely.
yes.
This is what we have to examine because the use of amulets is not a modern thing. The use of amulets predates Islam, predates Christianity, predates Judaism. You know, it predates Hinduism, right? When you look into the other countries of the world, you know, the Great American West, for example, the Native Americans, the American Indians, you know, in terms of how they were using amulets, the Aztecs, how they were using amulets. Um, you know, they were using amulets to try and store a negative power, you know, because that power was coming through from a negative place, you see. But just as we have items of darkness, we also have items of blessing. Now, then the definition of the amulet itself is open, yeah, because it's no longer becomes an amulet. An amulet is something that, by definition, is something that you wear around your person or that you keep on you in order to ward off evil or to change a disposition of evil. So, what we're understanding today, or what we're finding actually, I think this is the biggest thing, is what we're finding is that people are using amulets today, and the amulets they are wearing are derived from something negative in nature. Yeah. It would have been fine if it was positive, but it's not. It's negative in nature, and what you're having is someone who is very negative, um, is wearing an amulet that is, uh, you know, has a certain negativity value to it, which then is offsetting the negativity on that person. But that person is not cleared. That person still has presence of negativity around them. So the way I see it is that you're essentially just keeping the oppressed soul under more oppression. And that is a very dangerous thing, because every single human being deserves to be liberated, right? Liberated through the cleansing of the spirit, the cleansing of the body, the cleansing of the heart, and to try and make those steps towards seeking nearness, to the ever greater omnipotent presence, which is of the Lord Almighty, Lord of all the world. So, what we have to understand is that there is a reality to amulets in which it affects the wearer, it affects the people around them, and the problem is the understanding, especially of those who, swear to them by gospel. They they say that they want to get, their son or daughter married, so they need to get something to try and keep the marriage together. Now,
Mm.
it's like someone today saying, "Well, yeah, I know death is inevitable, and I want to be able to live past my sell-by date." Yeah,
Mm.
people are taking matters into their own hands. If you have a couple who are getting married and you are concerned about the sanctity or the safety of that marriage, then do what you can to try and, do more goodness in honor of this couple. Feed the poor in honor of this couple. Do good towards those who are the orphans, the widows, the disadvantaged in society, in the couple's name. That'd be far better than going to a spiritual person in order to try and obtain an item that has been prescribed for the purpose of uh, spiritually bringing these two people together. But the force in which it does that is not by a force of God, but a force that is ungodly. You see, that is the danger, because many spiritual people today have two sides, right? There's the good in which they do good, and the bad in which they do bad, right? And truly, those who are with God, they don't they don't mess about with these type of things. They don't get involved in areas of amulets and prescribing amulets and things like this. You see what I'm saying to you? It's only
Right.
because when you have access to uh, spiritual forces of the lower realms, which is below the heavens, that they are the ones who will usually give guidance on such matters, because again, that's what they understand. Because what we understand as human beings ourselves, from the perspective of the Holy Quran, is that we ourselves, we are not alone in this world. There are many unseen, creatures of the unseen around us, and they have been here longer than us. So they would have seen a lot more than us, what we've seen. You see what I'm saying? So when these spiritual people are making contact with this side, they are doing so, and one has to be very careful about what is being prescribed. So I'm not saying that all amulets are bad. What I am saying is that we have to be very careful about the intention, and that's the key word. It's the intention of why the amulet has been prescribed, or is being worn, or is being placed. That is very, very important. You see what I'm
Well,
saying
there
to
is a
you?
notion of the amulet where, in Islam, it's
Mm,
said you don't need to wear anything. It's you can just recite verses from the Holy Quran and heal yourself, and that is sufficient. And
mm,
there is people go by that, and there is from the Ayatul Kursi, the four kuls that we have recommended to pray, and it's like that's the ultimate protection, and it's enough to heal one. And then you have the notion of the evil eye, which people wear amulets of to protect themselves from, everything is energy, but there's people who have envy and malice in them, and so that negativity comes out on the person, and a person gets an amulet to protect them, or like an eye. You kind of break that negativity. How do we talk to our audience about the surahs, the evil eye, and the amulets, tying all that together before we wrap up this segment today?
Okay. Well, I mean, by and large, what we're saying is that, when you're wearing an item and you're wearing it with the intention that it's towards the reverence towards your parents, for example. For example, your late father, he's left you a watch, yeah, and you wear that watch out of respect for your father, yeah. That watch then has an emotional attachment, doesn't it? There's an emotional attachment with that watch. Now, when people are wearing amulets and they're given this by their sheikhs, um, if they're given it by their sheikhs, then really that is something that really can only be discussed between the sheikh and their student. Do you see what I'm saying to you? Because they are responsible for your spiritual health. Yeah, it's not for anyone else to then come in and start sort of dictating what their beliefs are. Yeah. So we're not kind of overstepping certain people's understanding on that. What we're saying is there are people who are not associated with anybody, who have no clear guidance of anything, and they are wearing things or going to people who have no sense of responsibility because they are not accountable to a particular masjid or an association, or they are standalone people who are offering services in order to try and manipulate events for you. But what they don't realize is that where God gives in one hand, He takes away in another. This is the situation. This is the reality. So that when you are going to these people, do not think that, yes, I'm getting short-term gains because I've paid X amount for this and I've got the loan I needed. Well, do not think that God will not take that loan away, or that you will pay another price later down the line. And that's what we have to be careful. Some people who don't believe in a religion will call that karma. Say that's karma coming around. Yes, of course, because God doesn't leave anyone without guidance, you see. So even the people who don't actually have a particular belief system, even those who believe in karma, is still a belief system. In knowing that in something that is given to you in a way that is not from God, yeah, can also then, there will be heavy consequences to pay, whether it comes through yourself or through your children. And that's what we're talking about. It's about saving those children from harm, about saving the future generations, in understanding that ancestral energy has a very important part to play in our spiritual disposition, in how our spirits are being formed in the womb of the mother. If the mother herself as a machine is not 100%, then the child's development of their spirit will not be at 100% and will be born into this world in a spiritual disadvantaged state. So then, being then pressurized by your peers in your community to say, well, if nothing's going right for you, then go and see someone to get something done so that you can have whatever you want from the world. But you're discounting where it's come from. You're discounting God. And this is the thing. We have to turn back to God in God consciousness, and only then we will truly realize the blessings that we already have been given. And then from that realization, that many more things will be made open to you that you will see right before you. You see, so and also just going back on the elements of wearing amulets as a mark of respect. You know, what we're talking about, those amulets, they're nothing where they've been written or there's surahs written or anything like that, but items of reverence. Now, when you wear something of reverence, like for example, the evil eye, that was an item that originally came about because it was to ward off evil spirits. So it was given by a priestess to another priestess, in that type of esoteric fashion. But it was also a way to identify a tribe from another tribe as an accessory. The amulet was an accessory. It was to show that you belong to this tribe and you were different. You see? So again, there's that reality as well. And then we have another reality in which it serves as a piece of remembrance that when you look at something, it reminds you of God. It reminds you of, a higher spiritual power, which is of the good. For example, many people in their homes today have either the cross on their walls, or they might have, they might have a
Mezuzah
photograph.
for
Yeah, yeah,
something.
or a
Mhm.
photograph of the holy prophets, you know,
Shrine or
holy, yeah,
yeah.
holy shrines or some. These are all acts of remembrance, you see. It's all to remind us on a daily basis of where our spiritual connection lies, whether it be through Musa, peace be upon him, or prophet, Jesus, peace be upon him, or holy prophet, peace be upon him and his holy family, So what we have to understand is people must be aware that they cannot expect to try and dictate their life by going to people to pay to get things done in a way and not realize that there are going to be repercussions from this that's going to be affecting the very people they may be trying to protect and help without realizing, you see, because they themselves have been conditioned to think, oh, I'm always unwell, so I'm going to get something written up to not be unwell anymore. So you're going to the pharmacy, you're not really understanding the formulation in the tablet, you're taking the tablet and you're feeling better for the interim moment, but instead you should have gone to the consultant and you should have gone to the specialist to find out why you've got that problem in the first place. You see? So people are now in a state where they're self-medicating with amulets. They are self-medicating. This is the danger. You see, in the past, where there were spiritual sheikhs and spiritual priests and priestesses and all that kind of thing, you know, those times, people, they were leaders, yeah, and they had followers, and they would look after the health of their followers by prescribing such things, because that's what was given to them. We're not discounting that, you know. But thankfully, and thank to God that we don't, as our association, have to utilize such things because of the blessing that has been given to us through our teacher, upon the family of the Holy Prophet, so something that we, are able to help people even now who have grown accustomed to wearing such things, and they themselves are realizing that after having a cleanse done, that the amulets they're wearing are causing them further distress, you know, and it's only then realized at that point that these amulets contain a certain amount of negative energy as well. So there's a lot of things coming to light, especially now in the way that spiritual malpractice has overtaken our world. Yeah, because nobody is being held accountable. Nobody is being spiritually responsible. You see, this is the
And
bottom line,
and
really.
and I think the other problem is that the hearts are sealed. The opening of the heart to tap into our conscious, as the systems of the outer have an
Mm,
influence over our minds, and it's all
mm,
about logic and reasoning. But
yeah.
truly, it's when you open your heart, it's when you can reflect and feel, because feeling is more powerful than a thought. And
Mm,
it is, it's really interesting on scientific studies that are coming out with the heart being a major organ and has like um, more of a thinking and processing role of the heart over the
mm,
mind. And when you have
yes.
both of them in tandem, in alignment, then the creative thought sprouts from the heart. And
Mm,
in this world where everything external, spirituality today is kind of something that is at the not to be seen, is not to be kind of looked at.
mm,
It's kind of tucked away, because as one awakens on their spiritual journey, it's growth happening, awakening on the conscious, you're feeling, you're more aware, and
yeah.
you speak the truth and you're fighting the truth. And
Mm,
unfortunately, we know truth has a few friends, and many people who have spoken the truth have had a price to pay, and 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 in essence, we see that all the time. Those who are fighting against the system, it will, and if they're getting traction, things happen. So it's important to understand with energy and how, on a healing perspective, the Divine Clinic Foundation is really here to help people to live their best life. So when you're feeling something, it is a true feeling. Do not negate those feelings. When you are sensing something is off and your environment, look into it deeper, because these are all messages for you to kind of to listen, to be more intuitive with that and self-reflect. And in that you will find, the answers. And we're here to help, as we've always said, our motto is save soul, save humanity. And Imam Saab, I'd like to say thank you so much for this meaningful discussion today and enlightening our audience on the amulets and what is being placed in them and the history and the knowledge behind them. And it's so important that people not to take these matters into their own hands and to seek a guide that can help them and rebalance their spirit so that they can live a best version of their life in this journey of life that we are all as travelers. So with this, say Assalamu alaikum, and thank you all for listening to our podcast today. Next time, this is QW and Imam.